Steve Denise here, brand director with Maizex Seeds, and I'm with our lead agronomist and agronomy guru, Greg Stewart.
Hey Steve.
Greg, I think we picked literally the hottest day of the year to come out and topically discuss drought in corn.
Right on.
So as the thermometer is punching 36, 37 degrees, what are you seeing in general when you look around the area?
Yeah, I think fairly universally across the province we're short on water. There are some good spots and there are some really tough spots, but in general, for this time of year, next week, earliest corn's going to already starting to throw a tassel. Yeah, we're moving to a very critical phase in terms of being short on water.
So what typically, before we talk about hybrids and maybe populations and things like that,
yeah,
what's a corn plant doing right now to defend itself against this stress?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to drive around and see fields that are wrapped up, whether we call it pineappling or roping corn plants trying to conserve moisture. Most of these corn plants have a good ear set in them, right? At knee-high corn across the province, we were in pretty good shape. We had some good ears set. And fertility is good in most fields, and so corn plants are in the mode of, well, let's conserve moisture and hang on to our ear potential. Now, they can only do that so long. We're coming into a phase here where we're going to need some water. But right now, this roping, this conservation of moisture is really a good thing and preserving the yield potential in what I think is really a pretty good crop set when we set ear size at around knee-high corn.
Okay, now let's build on that a little bit. So when we look at potentially hybrid differences or in our intensive plots, population difference, what are we seeing there?
So high population is a stress, and this is a year where we walk into our 38,000 plots. They look considerably more defensive or struggling to hold on to moisture compared to our plots that are at 24 or 26,000. We grimaced over how many fields of corn in Ontario we're at. 26,000 plants per acre, and that was just kind of what the spring delivered to us. Yeah, maybe that's not such a bad thing anymore to have some moderate populations given the lack of rainfall that we're under right now.
Okay, so any hybrid differences we're seeing?
So hybrid differences are showing up. It's really difficult to know visually what a hybrid difference means to you. So we've got a couple of hybrids in this plot that we're at here. And so if we think of 4368, which is this hybrid here, leaves are pretty open, probably growing a little faster. It doesn't look to be conserving moisture, and you say, boy, is that the hybrid for me? And then you go 4577, one right beside it, a much tighter roping, really conserving moisture, and you say, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think really the proof is going to be in the yield in these situations. I don't think you discard a hybrid because it's roped up and conserving moisture, and I don't think you necessarily discard a hybrid because it's churning away and seem to be doing all right. Very difficult to make decisions today on what's the best strategy for a hybrid. Gotta give us a couple of weeks to see how they succeed through the pollination window before we know how those hybrids are really performing from a drought tolerance perspective.
Now for farmers out there, because across the province we are seeing some variability. So the folks on the sharp sands or some of our heavier clay where we haven't had rain, and certainly we got some areas, including Eastern Ontario as an example, like they're not pitching a lot of rain for the year so far, period.
Yeah.
So if we're seeing firing up the plant, when do we need to be concerned, not concerned?
So in these tough spots, I mean, it's just the fact of life today is that we're losing some leaves up the bottom of the plant. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but I don't think you get too panicky about it until you start losing leaves right up into the middle of the canopy. If you can hang on to the ear leaf, a couple of leaves either side of that ear leaf, you're going to hang on to a fairly good percentage of your yield. A few leaves off the bottom, we don't like to see it, but not panicking yet until we start to see firing that comes up into that mid part of the canopy. Then we know we're taking a bigger hit on yield.
Management questions. So yeah. For some folks, splitting their nitrogen. I know there's some farms either the late planted corn, or perhaps they were going to go in with a late Y drop. What should we be looking at for nitrogen decisions when we're in this high stress drought period?
So I think we love the idea of delaying a nitrogen application into, the end of June, beginning of July, because it allows us to make a better decision. The three key factors in terms of those nitrogen decisions, whether to top up or how much to top up, really are based on, in my opinion, soil nitrate status, yield potential of the crop, and rainfall from sort of middle of June to middle of July. It's pretty easy to suggest today that our rainfall is not asking you to put more nitrogen down. Soil nitrates have been generally above average. Again, another strike against putting a whole lot of extra nitrogen down. And then, well, we've talked about yield potential. We're not falling, but we're not surging up the yield. So I think all three of those key factors would suggest to you, if you've got 135 to 150 pounds of N down, that may be enough this year that you should save the application cost and walk away. Now, if you only got 60 pounds down up front or 90 pounds down up front, that may be a decision where instead of going back in with 90 pounds of top up N, you're going to at least put down 45. But most of the signals, I think, are pushing us towards pulling back on the top up N.
Okay, very good. Now, that's an investment decision. The other investment decision a lot of farmers are going to be making over the next few weeks is, what about a foliar fungicide spray?
Right. The foliar fungicide question may make the nitrogen question look easier, right? Traditionally, we know from lots of data that the best time for a fungicide application is sort of VT, tassel out, right? When you look at stressed plants that are out there today, and you realize that there's very little leaf disease in play, there's the consideration of, well, what else do I get out of a fungicide besides leaf disease control? And you might get some plant health improvement or some stress tolerance. So there's a little bit of a force there that would push you towards, well, I'm going to spray my fungicide this year, particularly the strobilurin-based fungicides, because I want to give some stress protection to the hybrid. Yeah, not a guarantee, but at least it's something that you'd factor in, right? Then you would suggest, well, if I sprayed early, I'm going to be out of the ear mold game completely, because we know that you've got to spray the right fungicide and you've got to hit it on green silks in order to have any impact on jib. So if your primary reason for spraying a fungicide is ear mold and pulling your dawn levels down, you're waiting until silks are green. That's just the way it is, right? In some situations, would you dare spray early to try to protect the plant from a yield perspective and still come back again with a second fungicide application that was targeted directly at silks and ear mold? Possibly, but those are the factors that we're wrestling with as we consider a fungicide application. And then the one that you might suggest to me, Steve, is, hey, I got enough invested in this corn crop now. It looks like it's sort of on the slope down. I'm walking away and not spending another dime. Again, hard to argue with some of that theory as well, depending on how tough your crop looks today.
Yeah, very fair. Well, as Mother Nature proves every year is different.
Absolutely.
And I think we were trying to stand out here long enough to bring the clouds, but that may not necessarily happen today, Greg.
I'd be willing to stand longer if I thought it was actually going to rain, but if I look to the west, I don't see too many black clouds right now.
So thanks very much, Greg. Appreciate the input on the question of the day, really, in a lot of farms, and we hope the weather breaks over the next few days, and we'll see what the rest of the growing season brings us. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.